I'm now joined by Stuart from Forbes Travel Guide. Hello, Stuart. Thanks very much for joining us today. Maybe you want to introduce yourself quickly.
Sure. I'm Stuart Greif. I lead strategy, innovation, and operations at Forbes Travel Guide. Previously was Microsoft and JD Power's global exec, and worked at a unicorn startup as their travel lead called Amperity around customer data.
Fantastic. Yeah, thanks so much for joining us today. So I guess sticking with the trend of the questions we've had for our previous guests so far, looking back sort of a year ago now to December of 2022, what were your predictions for 2023? And now in reflection, where were you right?
Yeah, so the ones that came true, I mean, I've been very passionate about the social commerce space. I think, Hopper's been a company that borrowed the Chinese models, and you see the conflict with Expedia, where frankly, Hopper's a threat to the Expedias and bookings as an OTA. You see, even in retail, the company Temu, Temu, which I've spoken about, and I know Hopper's CEO has, and I have no personal or financial connection to Hopper, just to be clear. That's now taking the US and other countries in Europe by storm in terms of retail and taking on some of the big players there. So this kind of connectedness of social connections, of social shopping, I think there's a little bit of a difference. In retail, it's a lot easier to see how somebody on a social feed, whether it's company or an influencer, posts something. You're like, hey, I click on this post, and in two days, I can have something at my doorstep I buy. When it comes to hospitality, I think that's still continuing to be true in terms of the influence. The challenge is there's not as much direct attribution. Chances are you're going to go check the hotel off, go to different sites, but I don't think it's any less compelling, particularly for younger generations. So I think you see this persistence in social commerce, which I actually think is going to just continue to grow even into 2024. Short form video, what drove TikTok is continuing to drive engagement. So on the B2B side, there's a company called Unravel, Unravel app, which enables hotels and others selling travel to have influencer-like videos, not the influencers themselves. And they're seeing 4 times the engagement, 4 times daily active users, and they're driving literally tens of millions of incremental bookings because just short form video is stickier, right? It's more engaging. Most of Instagram growth has come from its Reels product, which essentially is short form video. You're also seeing, I see startups that are doing corporate training using short form videos, TikTok style. And people want to engage, not so much through players like TripAdvisor, right? They're going to TikTok, they're going to Instagram, but they also want to connect through their social graph, which means friends, family, but also somebody whose curation, i.e. an influencer, not necessarily somebody super famous, but here's the person who has a specialty in pastries, let's say in Paris, or somebody who has pub expertise, right, when it comes to seeing things in London. So there are a lot of startups and companies that are trying to connect dots to make it easier to basically filter, and close to 70% plus people are now going to social for inspiration. So I think that continues to be something that is compelling, and that I was on the mark on. I think in next year and over the next 10 years, when we look back, influencers will be an established channel. You're going to have the big players like Adobe and other platforms that are rising enable you to quickly engage and execute a campaign the same way you do on Facebook or Instagram today.
Yeah, I think traditionally we've really thought of short form video and social as being sort of young millennials, Gen Z, and that's where they are. And that's still true, right? But I think we're seeing that across the age demographics now, and that's where things are really coming to the forefront, actually. So yeah, very, 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 very interesting. Tell me about where you were wrong over the past year. Where did you maybe not get the nail on the head?
Yeah, I feel like fortunately in the
Yeah.
industry, I've been pretty good, pretty fortunate overall to be uh, uh, more on the mark than off. But in my life, I'm certainly wrong quite a bit, and I have my wife and kids to remind me of that every day. Can you hear me, Charlie? It looked like the broadcast broke up a little bit.
No, perfectly fine. Yeah, we're good. Or at least I am.
Great. Yeah, so having a wife and a kids keeps me grounded in all the ways I'm wrong in daily life. I think the big one, and Richard and Joanne spoke about this from my perspective, is the disappointment that there's still this big say versus do, what consumers say versus do when it comes to sustainability, responsible tourism, regenerative. And I think Richard and Joanne hit on a lot of those. I think I largely agree that the industry needs to provide, and there are players that are building this. So, for example, Allo Index, Amazon has engaged them to vet hotels for ESG and sustainability measures as kind of prerequisite for their employees to choose and select hotels they stay at. I love Kind Traveler, KIND Traveler, which actually right now has a give and get model with hotels where the employees in the hotel chooses a local impact cause, and their guests can provide a direct contribution. 100% goes to that cause in return for some additional benefits while on property. And I love that because it has a direct impact. It's not this hypothetical tree everyone's counting. Recent Focusrite data, Focusrite just had its annual event in November, said that about a quarter of travelers don't even think that they travel in a way that has enough of an impact on the environment. And the amount that people are willing to pay a premium, I'm not saying they should be charged more for sustainable options, is only about 10 to 15%. So the irony to me is this is more a question of when. This is a long-term trend. It is vitally a core value of younger generations, and there will be a time where there aren't choices. I think the industry, we need to do more, and some of those things Richard touched on as well with Joanne about, when people are making the decisions, having areas that don't feel greenwash, that help people distinguish the way Allo Index, for example, with Amazon is working as one example. Those are things that I think will help. It's going to take a little bit of time. And then I think what you want to do as a hotel is you want to be able to get credit for the things that you can control and do. Not every hotel can develop a new, desalination near, the ocean and use the ocean water, for example, to cool their hotel. So what are the things you can do? How do you build that culture in the hotel? And you'll get credit for that because your guests are going to see that. On the flip side of that, increasingly, if you don't, people are going to see that, and that's going to hurt you with guests. So I think, for me, I'm still optimistic long term. And I would say there's one other prediction. I kind of had mixed results. I did predict my hair would grow back, and I was partially right. It did grow back, just not in the places I would have liked it to. So that's just a part of getting older, unfortunately, Charlie.
Yeah, unfortunate there. Yeah, I think ESG is definitely a very interesting topic. I know in the sessions last week, we had Stuart Goodwin from Lamington Group join, and obviously they've been doing some very interesting things for a number of years in the ESG sector. I got a tour around their new Belfast property, which opened at the end of October, and it's really interesting to see how they've really got that culture of ESG throughout the entirety of their business, and they're really thinking about it in areas that, when I was getting this tour, I just never would have thought about myself. So they're really thinking about it. Obviously, when you have a new property, there's definitely advantages there, being able to think from the ground up about how you want to do this. But I also agree with you. There's still much more say than do, because there's still those other factors around price and location that seem to still be prevalent for most guests, and that ESG side of things is an added bonus, but it doesn't seem to be the core driving factor today, but hopefully we see that change in the future. So very interested to see how that develops. What was your biggest surprise of the year? The thing that really caught you off guard that in the end of 2022 you didn't expect was going to happen, but now you look back and caught you with surprise.
Yeah, I think it's even more than I thought. The persistence and resilience of travel demand. I think post COVID, everybody kind of stepped back and I think in life said, I want to be self-actualized. I want to do things in small ways and big ways that make me feel joy or fulfilled, or in ways that we might have postponed just till we took a vacation or just on the weekends, and work from anywhere contributed to that. So I think, that resilience and persistence of travel and experiences, and that's one of the things I do think. I'm like Richard. I'm secretly hopeful, even in the face of softness. One of my predictions for 2024, and we could probably pivot to, what are some of the shifts for next year on the slides if you want to, is that, that even if there is softness, I think, we have in the US, for example, boomers retiring a huge amount of money. They're going to spend money on experiences. You have the younger generations. I think you're going to also see, there's a Wall Street Journal article recently about how in the US, the housing affordability challenge has actually taken some of that money, because it's so out of touch, that people were putting away for a home and saying, well, I can't afford a home. I'm going to use some of that to enrich my life and travel. And so I think it is going to prove, even in the softness, I'm a little afraid to say it and jinx it too loudly. But like Richard, I'm hopeful that we're going to see more of that in 2024 as well.
Yeah, I completely agree on the housing there. I mean, like, it's definitely my generation that I think are feeling that at the moment. That, yeah, the prospects of housing affordability just isn't there. So I may as well make the most of the money I have, and also, travel is easier, generally cheaper, more availability for travel these days. Obviously, remote work and the idea of leisure as well. People, blending their business trips with leisure as well. I really don't like the word pleasure, but it seems we haven't found a better word for it yet. So we stick with it for now, at least. Um, where do you think AI in particular is going to really impact the guest journey? There was a few comments earlier and a little bit of conversation about that, but I know you've got some of your own thoughts as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think, two quick areas, I think, AI that haven't been really hit upon or specific. I'm going to predict by the second half of 24, you're going to see some early adopters of leaning into kind of bleeding edge use cases, whether that's generative AI in marketing campaigns, whether it's engineering and develop product, whether it's efficiencies in contact centers, really start to drive cost structure advantages, right? So I think, an example would be nicer.travel, which is enabling the advisor agency community, still having the golden age of the advisors, but kind of making them superhuman and freeing them up using AI. It was interesting at Focusrite, you had the co-founders of Kayak, Paul English, who on stage with his co-founder, Steve Hafner, who still runs Kayak and Open Table, say that he's building the Kayak killer. And he used the example of, he has 10 engineers, Kayak has maybe 140, and he had one spend 3 weeks on a product that Kayak's had 10 people on for 10 years. And his guy or gal basically created something better, than that in less than 3 weeks. And when I think about that from a cost structure position and the opportunity of players to undercut established entrenched traditional players, I think that's really big. I think you're also going to see the rise of the prompt engineer as a high demand need, by the second half of next year, and a rush for people to get it. The irony to me too of the two Kayak co-founders talking about, Paul talking about the Kayak killer, with Steve saying, well, but you don't have a brand, and brand is huge. That's true. Is that, when I was at Microsoft, Skiff covered me in 2017 talking about 5 years from then, what would become Chat GPT. And you can find the article about Microsoft and AI. So I say 5, 10 years from now, isn't Chat GPT or another similar AI, generative AI, going to be the ultimate meta? Why do you need Kayak possibly even 5 or 10 years from now? So I don't know if they're kind of getting into it in short term negates the fact that longer term it might obviate the need for Kayak. And then there are some big shifts I see in 2024. If we want to turn to those, I can touch on just a few.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully, whoever's controlling the slides can switch on to the next slide for us. Unfortunately, they don't let me do that. They don't trust me. So, yeah,
The
yeah.
future.
Please, go. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, to the future.
So social commerce I've talked about. Experiences. Taylor Swift in the U.S. alone had a $5 billion impact on the economy. There's a company called Dharma, Dharma. The website is Seek Dharma, Seek Dharma. And they're the official provider for Netflix and Paramount of the Emily in Paris experience. And after the third season of Emily in Paris basically launched, which was in January, so it wasn't like it was in a lovely month to go to Paris, though Paris is lovely any time of year. There's a 30% spike in folks looking to book in Paris. Only half of them book, but that's still a huge spike. I think younger generations are going to want not just destinations, and people have been traveling this way for a while, so I'm not suggesting, but I think that experiential part. Well-being, that includes things all the way up to longevity and just kind of, how you're able to extend that into your travels. And luxury are going to continue to grow. And I think, particular to Muse and your audience, I think there's this really big distinction that I want to call out, and I haven't publicly shared this in these terms, but there's really this separation of between hospitality and accommodation. And I think too many hospitality players, i.e., hotels, are pretending that they're providing this kind of experiential or this warm hospitality, this engagement, when really what they're only providing is accommodation. It's kind of the way the airline industry and coach, you still get a human touch, and it can depend on the person and brand. But if you really want warm, human, personalized, kind of engaging service, you're kind of in business class or you're out of luck. And I think this is what I love about Muse, along with other disruptors like you, is that you're really enabling the flexibility of hotels to provide the experiences, to drive more revenue, to think differently about time that consumers and guests dwell in hotels, those in local community, and how to better lever that asset in ways. And you're enabling it with technology. Yes, it's through the PMS, but expanding into other areas. And I think that's a win-win for hotels to be able to provide hospitality and engagement, and also, for the guests to have a better experience and better value. I see startups, one called Legends that has travel DNA, that was Focusrite's global startup winner, was a Skift Idea finalist, and they came out of Techstar Austin. That's enabling consumers and their travel DNA to be used in ways to drive personalization. I feel like if the old systems, whether it's PMS systems, customer data systems, could have solved the problems that, folks said, I just want you to know that I've come to this hotel 10 times and not, ask if it's my first stay. I think Joanne, said something to that effect, is, if those systems could have solved it, they would have. And what I'm excited about is I see the Muses, I see the Legends, I see the Unravels, I see these companies rising up that over the next 10 years, the ones using AI as well, are going to enable us to kind of cross a bridge that historically the legacy systems couldn't get you there. It was too costly. Things like API as a product now enable. And so for me, I just want our industry to be successful. And so I'm super excited. I'd love to be proved right about some things in 2024. I'd love to be proved wrong as well and challenged. I think we all need to be able to engage in spirited debate, to be respectful and challenge the idea, not the person, more, because I think the best ideas and ways forward come from that. And I really appreciate the opportunity to share my perspective with your audience today, Charlie.
Yeah, thank you so much. Completely agree with everything you've said. I've had many a conversation with hoteliers about the difference between accommodation and hospitality. I can't agree more. We talk about it as user disengagement, really. I think today the hospitality has become too transactional, and how can I get your passport details, can I get your card details, and here's your key to your room, you're on the second floor, etc. It's not about that warmth, really, that service. That's hospitality at its core. It's become far too transactional. So I agree. I think it's definitely true of data too. We need the data. It seems we've already got it, but we're not utilizing it correctly just yet.
And to your prior guest right before we came on earlier, point about loyalty. Loyalty is earned. Loyalty should be based on love, not, I joked with my parents, been married a very long time. I asked my mom what the secret was, and she winked at me and she said, inertia. And too many, particularly airline, because you don't have as much of a choice, programs tend to be kind of hostage loyalty systems or points. And those, I'm not saying it doesn't matter, but there's no reason a hospitality loyalty program, and I think about companies like Legends, but could it enable you to do experiences with a chef, who's doing something at the local farmers market, and you could bring a neighbor that's not even part of the loyalty program. So I think many of them have been transactional structurally in the hotel industry because the brands and loyalty programs may be different in revenue motivations and real estate owners and management companies. I understand those structural differences, so I'm not trying to be naive or overly idealistic. But ultimately, when people come to your property, that is your opportunity to give them an experience, to provide atmosphere, to provide real human connection, to enable them to be their best selves. And I do believe 5 or 10 years from now, right, that is going to be so much more critically important with generative AI. When I ask and I only get 3 or 5 returns on a hotel, you want to be in that consideration set because people are talking about you because I asked for you by name. And yes, being part of a loyalty program can be part of that differentiation. Um, in the future, I think if you think about getting 5 or 7 returns back, even that much, there's only 1 or 2, maybe 3 players that can be low cost, and that's commoditized. So if you're looking for the lowest price, but if I ask for a tour, for example, not a hotel, I don't care whether it's coming from Viator, Get Your Guide, right? Whether it's coming from TripAdvisor, right? Whatever local source. I don't mean me personally, but my AI co-pilot is going to pull from all things out there that suit me personally. So what's going to get somebody to get a tour or a hotel is the experience you're providing that's differentiated, that says, hey, this is a place I want to go. And Muse, I love the way you do that. I absolutely love it.
Completely agree. Listen, we're out of time, Stuart, but it's been great chatting with you. I'm really looking forward to, in 12 months' time, coming back and revisiting this conversation and seeing where you're right and where maybe maybe you're wrong, and yeah, seeing what happens over the next 12 months is going to be really exciting. So thanks very much for your time.
Maybe I'll even have some new hair. Good to see
Maybe.
you.
Thanks, Stuart. Have a great day.
Cheers.